It usually happens on a Tuesday. A top performer asks for a quick meeting, sits down, and slides a resignation letter across the table. For management, this feels like an ambush, a sudden, unpredictable shock to the system. Leadership usually looks for answers in a few familiar places. They assume the employee found a higher salary, got poached by a competitor, or simply didn't have the loyalty required for the long haul. These explanations act as a psychological shield, allowing leadership to avoid looking inward. Blaming the market or the employee's character hides the solid black foundation of the actual problem. The resignation process begins long before the 2 weeks' notice is handed in. By the time that resignation letter hits the desk, the decision has likely been months in the making. Operational environments defined by confusion, shifting expectations, and inconsistent direction create a specific, measurable decay in employee commitment. On this timeline, we track internal resignation, the exact moment an employee takes a mental exit. Though still on payroll, silent frustration reaches a tipping point. The solid line is physical presence. The dotted line is declining psychological investment. The void represents real-time loss. The physical resignation is the final symptom of a system that leadership allowed to break down months ago. When the environment becomes untenable, the employee eventually follows the exit signs. Management uses the word agility to describe a workplace with constant pivots. They argue that a fast-paced market requires a certain level of chaos. There is a sharp distinction between true agility and managerial incompetence. While an agile system adapts while staying connected, an incompetent one constantly changes expectations without providing a rationale, snapping the links of trust that hold a team together. This creates intense emotional pressure. A high performer might stay late to finish a critical project, only to find leadership has scrapped the entire initiative by the following morning without a word of acknowledgement. Inconsistent decision-making makes dedication feel like a liability. High performers realize their effort is being wasted, which directly accelerates their timeline toward leaving. Expecting employees to handle the heat is a way to justify a poorly insulated, erratic environment. It penalizes the people who care the most about the work they do. This isolation stems from the information vacuum. When leadership stops providing regular, clear communication, employees are left to navigate the organization in the dark. Humans fill silence with assumptions, and in a corporate setting, those assumptions are almost always negative. This lack of data creates deep, persistent dissatisfaction. Watch closely for the moment a previously vocal employee stops asking questions and stops fighting for their ideas. This shift into silence is the most dangerous behavioral red flag in an organization. Leadership often misreads this as the employee falling in line. They mistake the lack of pushback for agreement or a newfound harmony. A quiet employee is the loudest warning sign that your system has failed them. Their silence is the sound of an individual who has already finished their internal resignation. Turnover is a delayed reaction, giving leadership a window to act. The intervention zone represents the time between initial frustration and the final walkout. Closing the information vacuum is the first step. Rigid consistency in communication stabilizes a declining engagement line. Beyond communication, the culture must allow for psychological safety. Employees need to know they can point out flawed decisions or ask questions without fear of retaliation. Trust is rebuilt by recognizing effort, even when the ROI isn't immediate. Acknowledging the time spent on a project that was eventually scrapped proves that the employee's contribution is valued more than the final outcome. The responsibility for retention sits entirely with leadership. By fixing the environmental system and providing consistent direction, the retention of top performers becomes a natural byproduct of the workplace.